All righty. It looks like we have quite an attendance here, folks. Well, let's get things kicked off. So it's about 10:04. Thank you all so much for joining in. My name is Jason Goodman. I manage product marketing here at Resilio, and I'll be hosting the webinar and then handing it off to our primary speaker, Josh Sargent, who is our VP of Partners and Sales. And we also have James Moore on the line, who's one of our Resilio customer engineers, and he's actually going to be giving a live demo of Connect later in the program. And Zeph, who manages our customer engineering team, is also on the line, and he's going to be fielding your questions as they come in and relaying those to the group, and we'll do our best to answer those. So again, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Zoom feature. It says Q&A. You can submit questions at any time, and they will queue up, and then we'll answer them when we get to that part of the demo, part of the program. So with that, I just wanted to review the agenda really quickly. We're going to talk a bit about Resilio, who we are, what we do, what our core Resilio Connect product does, get into some of the challenges with DFSR, and we think that you folks, if you're familiar with DFSR, already have a good handle on what those challenges are, so we're not going to dwell on those. Then get into what we're seeing as some popular use cases for DFS. And with that, I'd also just like to talk about what Resilio is doing. So if we could move on to the Resilio slide, just in terms of our software, some of you may be familiar with us, some of you may be customers. For those of you who don't know much about Resilio, we offer a variety of solutions, and they really span from core on-prem to the extreme edge to cloud. And you've got customers doing things across all of those paradigms. And I think there's a few traits that all of our customers share, even though they use our products in very different ways quite often. One of those traits is that our customers place tremendous value on their data. Whether this is the Canadian Railroad moving mission critical files across hundreds of their trains, to major gaming companies who are actually building games with our software and distributing their build files, often quite large, to many other people at scale, to workflows like 7 Wonders, where they're actually, have editors on location acquiring 8K footage in real time, editing it, and then ingesting it back to the cloud in their on-prem workflows. And I think there's also a real transformational aspect to what customers are doing. So for example, with the pandemic, there was an immediate need for remote work, and companies like Skywalker Sound were able to pivot really quickly and essentially turn their workforce on for remote work in a secure way without disrupting their core media and entertainment workflows. Another thing that we're helping customers do is simply obtain high reliability and predictability for how they move their data. And when you bring into the factor extremely unreliable networks or the ability to scale with faster networks, that predictability becomes more and more important, especially when you've got time-sensitive workflows and applications that need immediate access to that data. And I just wanted to say, a couple other things before I turn it over to Josh. One is we've had a real focus in the engineering team on scalability. And we think of scalability not just as the ability to go faster on faster networks, but the ability to handle exponentially larger data sets measured in millions of files, to be able to rapidly index and synchronize those data sets, not just between 2 computer endpoints, but many, many endpoints. So this is like non-trivial stuff, and we've had a real focus of that here at Resilio. And then the other thing is the enterprise. So we're talking about DFS and other Microsoft technologies, but the ability for customers to use the Resilio technology in a highly compatible, enterprise-friendly way and take advantage of the existing infrastructure that you already have. On-prem, it could be a variety of different storage types, so being able to use that storage, but also then being able to incorporate the cloud on your own terms and have your choice of cloud. So those have been some of the focus areas here at Resilio. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Josh, and he'll get into a little bit more about our company, Connect, and the DFS use cases specifically. So with that, Josh, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jason. And thank you everybody for your time today and joining us here to learn a little bit about Resilio Connect and its use case for DFSR replacement specifically. As Jason was saying, Resilio Connect is a tool that is used by our customers for all different kinds of reasons. I just want to mention that at the outset because we are going to focus in on this one particular use case, DFSR replacement today. But I just wanted to be clear that one of the core characteristics about our solution is its simplicity and its focus, and that is shown by the many different ways that our customers use us in all types of industries, all types of customers of all sizes, small customers to the very largest of the large customers. Syncing small amounts of data, maybe over really terrible satellite connections, or huge media and entertainment or gaming customers that are syncing many tens of gigabits per second to thousands and thousands of devices. It's a simple focus tool that really just tries to be really good at this one thing, and so it's useful in all kinds of scenarios. But today, we really want to focus on DFSR and DFSR replacement because Microsoft's DFS solution is a great solution. The DFSR, which is the data mover piece, you guys know, has some challenges. And so customers are coming to us on a weekly basis looking for solutions to some challenges that they're presented with when they're running DFSR in their environment. And again, I'm not going to dwell on these, but just to highlight, if you haven't been exposed to DFSR very long, you're evaluating it, potentially using it. These are some of the issues that our customers are very frequently coming to us with, and those are just its general unreliability. DFSR is kind of great; it works when it works, and then all of a sudden it sort of stops working, and it's usually unclear why. Sometimes it's because there's too many files, the data set's too large, there's too many copies or too many locations you're trying to sync to. It's easy to misconfigure, because it doesn't provide a great management or a very simple management interface. There's not very much visibility into what's going on, and if there has been an issue, you're not going to get an alert of any kind. You're not going to know it sometimes for many weeks or months. We've had customers come to us and say, "Hey, I just found out today because a user opened a support ticket that DFSR hasn't actually been syncing my data to these 3 locations for the past 45 days." And I'm not exaggerating. That happens frequently. And they just happened to stumble upon it because some user was looking for a file. And then they realized when they started digging into it that DFSR has been broken for a long time, and they just had no idea because DFSR just doesn't provide that kind of visibility and insight into what's going on. When you're trying to enable a high availability solution architecture or active type environment, just to provide better availability characteristics for the business, DFSR has issues failing over if there's an outage. It's not always automated, and usually if there's an interruption in the network or a node goes down, DFSR tends to spin for hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. And again, I'm not exaggerating. Just trying to figure out how to restart the synchronization and pick it right back up. And that's just that's a non-starter when your business depends on having your data synchronized and your users in remote locations depend on having access to that data. So all these issues lead to high costs for the business, high costs for IT. You spend way too much time troubleshooting DFSR, trying to manage replication errors, get things back in sync. Your end users are waiting for their data; they can't be productive, and that adds up to cost to the business, both in actual real productivity and in risk. And DFSR database corruption. These are some of the most common challenges that customers are presented with when they're using DFSR, and they, like I said, they stem from various reasons: configuration issues, poor insight, large data sets, large number of sites, whatever. So Resilio Connect solves these challenges in a number of ways. So to get an understanding of how Resilio Connect works and what it is, I just want to give you a quick high-level overview of what exactly is Resilio Connect, and then we'll get into exactly how we solve some of those challenges with DFSR. So at its core, Resilio Connect is just software. We're a software company. It's what we do. We focus on synchronizing files and folders. That's it. It's not a heavy-handed data management platform that tries to do everything and manage your data in all possible ways. It's laser focused on synchronizing files and folders and doing it better than everybody else. And so there's two components to it. There's a management console, central management console, which is where administrators come to configure everything and monitor everything. And the management console piece is where DFSR customers, if you've used DFSR for a while or had to troubleshoot it, this is where they typically fall in love, because our management console is a simple modern web GUI that provides a ton of instrumentation and insight into what's going on at every level of the stack. So you can see an overview dashboard that kind of shows you all of your jobs and all of your agents, all of your synchronization jobs together, and see what the status of them are. Are there any errors? Is everything in sync or not? How fast is things going? Have there been any network outages, things like that? But then importantly, you can drill down and get much more granular level of detail. If you want to click on one particular synchronization job, you click on that and you get a new set of dashboards with, again, a new set of instrumentation dials to show you exactly what's happening just with that one synchronization job. Which files have already synced and which ones are syncing right now this very second, and which ones are in queue to be synced next. Is the agent walking the file system? Is it hashing files? What's it doing? You can even click on an agent and get that level of detail. New set of dashboard just for that one agent. And so you can see, CPU and memory and disk IO and network IO, all kinds of details at every level in that stack. So you can see the whole thing together, an individual job, or even an individual agent within a job. And so you get tremendous insight. You're never going to be left wondering, is my sync doing okay? Are all of my remote locations in sync? Are any of them out of sync? If they're out of sync, what's the ETA until they're going to be back in sync? You get tons of insight here. And so this is a huge departure from DFSR, where DFSR administrators are used to Googling around for some secret PowerShell command to try to run some CLI script to get some sort of output from DFSR to find out what's going on. It's not so with Resilio, and this is really a great difference between Connect and DFSR. And this management console, like I said, is used by the administrators to control and monitor everything. It's also collecting the logs from all the agents, and you can even open up support tickets right here from the management console. And our support is fantastic. And I don't know if you've ever tried to get support from Microsoft for DFSR, but it's challenging. Our support team is loved by our customers. And the other piece of the software is the agents themselves, right? So there's the management console that sort of is the command and control center. And then the agents are installed on those file servers out there that are actually doing the synchronizing of the data. So that they're doing all the heavy lifting, right? They're walking the file systems, they're hashing files and synchronizing data with each other. And it's a peer-to-peer architecture, which is really different than most other solutions out there. So these agents aren't all like hub and spoke architecture coming back to some central point of failure. Peer-to-peer architecture, all of these agents are all talking to each other and serving each other and getting data from each other, chunks of the data. And so we're able to synchronize much faster than a traditional sort of hub and spoke architecture. But that peer-to-peer architecture is not just better for performance, it's also better for scalability. All right, with us, the more agents you're adding, the faster and more highly available everything gets. You're sort of sharing the workload among all those agents. And it's also, like I said, better for high availability. If any of those agents goes down, it's okay. All the other agents are still syncing, no problem. If they were talking to the agent that went down, it's fine. They just go get their data from other agents. And so they continue working just like nothing happened. And then when that one comes back up, it very quickly figures out what data it's missing, and it gets sort of swarmed with the chunks of data that it's missing from all of its peers. And so it gets itself back in sync automatically, super quickly. No administrator intervention required. So you can start to see why Resilio Connect pairs so well with Microsoft's DFS. Because if you replace DFSR, the data mover, with Resilio Connect, you get our much faster, more reliable, more scalable data movement sort of solution, which much more insight, et cetera. But you also gain this additional sort of level of high availability that just wasn't possible with DFSR. And so these, like I said, these agents are the ones doing all the work, and these are on the servers that are syncing data. And they're communicating with the management console to sort of get their instructions and sending logs and things. But those are the two components of the solution. It's a very simple architecture. It just scales really well. And so the benefits of using Resilio as a DFSR replacement are pretty clear, right? Simplicity. You get this nice simple GUI to manage and control everything in. It's really easy and quick to get started. We typically DFSR customers come to us in pain where, their sites are out of sync and their business is at risk. And we can get them up and going typically in under an hour and get their data syncing, and that day typically have them back in sync and back operational and the risk mitigated. So we can do this really quickly, even if you've got pre-seeded data. If you've got some data at different sites, and site A has newer data than site B, and some files is newer in site C, we can handle all that for you and just get everything back in sync with the latest versions. And we give you that clear visibility, like I've been talking about, and reliability and high availability characteristics that I talked about. Performance, like I said, is sort of off the charts. We can go super fast between nodes. We've got a WAN acceleration protocol that'll help you keep the pipe full over any distance, any latency connection. We can handle huge numbers of files. So some of our largest customers are syncing several hundreds of millions of files, and there's just no chance of doing that with DFSR. DFSR typically tops out about 1 million files before it starts having problems, and we can sync hundreds of millions of files. If you want to go super fast, 10 gig plus connectivity, no problem. And like I said, any distance, right? Anywhere around the globe you want to sync, we can do it with any network connection type. And so customers are coming to us to get those benefit or to get those features. The point of those obviously is to solve the pain associated with DFSR, right? To stop spending hours and hours every week troubleshooting DFSR. One of our customers told us he was spending something like 16 or 17 hours a week managing DFSR problems. And I exaggerated that, didn't I? 13 hours a week. 13 hours a week. That's significant. That's over a day of his time every week just managing DFSR. That was just gone when he deployed Resilio. And that's powerful because it's obviously not just that administrator's time. It's all of his end users now that have access to their files when they need it. Some customers are deploying us because they, maybe they're acquiring other companies or adding new remote locations, and they need a fast, repeatable, simple way, reliable way to bring those other parts of the business and into the fold and synchronize their data. Maybe there's a new cloud initiative, cloud first initiative, or a hybrid cloud initiative, and you want to sync data from your on-prem data centers to the cloud. We can do that for you and synchronize your DFS data up to the cloud. Let's see, customers are using DFS for a number of reasons. Like I mentioned, Resilio Connect has a ton of different use cases, right? You can see we're focused on syncing files and folders. So you can imagine all kinds of use cases: remote work, cloud synchronization, pushing out software updates to thousands of locations, pulling data back in, protecting it, right? But customers are deploying DFS for a few reasons. Sometimes that's to synchronize a few servers within a data center at its most simplest case. Sometimes it's syncing multiple sites or multiple data centers or multiple on-prem data centers and cloud locations. Maybe there's a lot of branch offices, or you got factories or restaurants or stores, lots of remote sort of branch office locations. I mentioned hybrid cloud. And another very common one these days that customers try to use DFS for is to synchronize VDI user container profiles. So if you're trying to provide sort of an active-active VDI environment, with VDI infrastructure in a couple of different data centers, or just highly available in a single data center. And DFSR just doesn't handle these larger files very well. So a lot of customers have come to us to replace DFSR for this as well. And we actually handle this use case extremely well. So the site-to-site synchronization solution is pretty typical, right? You're syncing a few servers, maybe within a data center, or like I said, remote sites. And really, it's all about simplicity. You want to make sure this data gets synced reliably. Maybe it's a one-way sync, maybe it's a two-way sync. We can configure it all different ways. Maybe you've got some locations that are really remote and have really sort of iffy network connections, low bandwidth, or maybe it's their intermittent connectivity, or extremely high latency, or high degree of packet loss. Our WAN acceleration protocol just handles that really well. You want this to be reliable. This is something core. You need to get this data synced and keep it synced and have access everywhere. This needs to be rock solid. Branch office sync, kind of same thing, but typically with many more locations. You've got maybe one or two sort of core offices or head data centers, and lots of remote or branch offices. And in this case, there's sometimes an added little twist, which is that maybe you have lots and lots of data in the core data center, but you maybe don't have that much storage capacity in those remote branch offices. And so we give you the ability to sync sort of on demand in a thin way. We call it transparent selective sync, to sort of act as like a branch office cache, if you will. So you can do a full sync out to the branch offices, or you can do partial syncs and just sort of cache the hot data at those branch offices. Which is a really nice feature if you don't want to deploy, say, terabytes and terabytes of capacity at these small branch offices. And then hybrid cloud sync, right? We are big about being able to synchronize data anywhere. We, like I said, it's sort of core to our solution that we're laser focused on doing one thing and being applicable in many different use cases. And we want to be able to sync your data anywhere you need it. And that includes any cloud provider, any cloud region. Maybe you want to sync between regions of cloud provider. Maybe you want to sync to two different availability zones within a region. Sometimes that's actually difficult for cloud providers to do. And so we can do that. If you want to keep data in sync between on-prem data centers and the cloud, no problem. You want to sync between multiple clouds, no problem. We can keep your data in sync anywhere you need it. So this is helpful if you have a new sort of initiative to synchronize data to the cloud, or do a data migration, or keep things in sync, whatever you need. And then I mentioned this last use case, which is VDI profile container sync. And so when you're trying to provide a highly available VDI infrastructure for customers, you need those profile containers to be synchronized to all the different file servers, all the different locations extremely quickly, so that if your end users are logging into their remote desktop in one location and they log out, and next time they log in, they're redirected to some other location, their data needs to already be there in order for them to have a good experience. The time it takes for a user to log in and get access to their desktop is critical. Call it time to desktop. And using Resilio Connect to sort of swarm these profile containers to all your locations ensures that the data gets there as quickly as possible. It's ready and waiting, and time to desktop is drastically reduced. We've been really successful with this with several customers. So I talked a lot, so I want to stop talking and just transition it over to James to give you a little demonstration and just show you how quick and easy this is to get up and going and replace DFSR with Resilio Connect in your environment. So James?
Let's get my lab going. All right. So welcome to the Resilio Management Console. This is kind of the single pane of glass as a quick overview of what the management console looks like. For the management console, we can see a couple different things that are going over, kind of see what our transfer speeds look like, how much data is going back and forth. We can quickly see how many files are transferred between, the multiple servers. And before we dive into this, there's a couple things we need to usually do to kind of kick off a DFSR migration. The first thing we're going to do is we'll hop into our lab server, and we need to stop this DFSR, or the DFS replication service. So we'll go ahead and stop this guy. And then we need to set this to manual. So one of the reasons we set it to manual is if you need to do patches or updates and reboot the server, we don't want this replication service kicking off again. While we're in here, you see we have namespace. It's still running. We fully integrate and work with DFS namespaces, so that's not a problem at all. And then we'll go ahead and go to lab 2, and we'll go down to that DFS replication service and just rinse and repeat here. We're going to stop this guy and set it to manual as well. All right, looks good. So also, while we're in here, since we are doing a DFSR kind of migration, NTFS permissions are highly important. So we need to make sure that the Resilio agent is running as a domain user that has full access or full rights to the data set that we'll be syncing, because that service account will be used to synchronize those NTFS attributes. So we'll just check that on both servers real quick, and it looks good there. Now, from here on out for this migration, everything will be done through our centralized management console. One of the things we're going to check first is we're going to go to profiles. We try to make things real easy for this migration. So in profiles is kind of settings, or it's really a JSON file that controls what the agents are doing and how the jobs perform. So we have these presets here to kick this off and make it easy. For DFSR, we do something called a synchronization job. So the first thing we're going to select is this optimize for sync job. And then the last thing we're going to do is optimize for DFSR. And by selecting these, it kind of pre-populates some of these settings that we have, in our management console profiles, just to kind of make things easier so that, you're not having to go through here and manually tweak settings. All right, we'll go ahead and save that guy. Then lastly, we have this jobs profile down here. And since NTFS permissions are important for DFSR, we'll crack this guy open and just make sure that synchronize NTFS is set to sync full ACLs. Already is, so we'll go ahead and cancel that guy. Now we need to link the servers together. So this is accomplished under this configure jobs profile, and we'll go ahead and create a new job. We have different kinds of synchronization that can be done, but for DFSR, we're really going to focus on this synchronization. Go ahead and click next there. Let's go ahead and get to the job. We'll just call it prod pod. And then we're going to select our agents. So in our demonstration, we really only have 2 servers for it, but 2 is not the limit. We can do hundreds of servers and kind of make it that peer-to-peer mesh. So we'll go ahead and select our 2 servers that will be in this sync job. And then next up, we are going to pick the path where the data lives. So for us to come into this E drive, we have that production folder right there. Go ahead and knock that guy out. We're just going to rinse and repeat for the second server. All right. So then we have this reference agent tab. So reference agent is kind of, think of it as a single source of truth for NTFS permissions. So in the case that DFSR gets out of sync and we're doing a tree merge and there might be some permission errors, we need to know who to fall back to validate that permission. For our use case, we're just going to pick lab 1, and we'll go ahead and click next. All right, so here's our quick settings. This is that job profile we looked at earlier. So if you had multiple jobs or multiple sync profiles, this is where you could pick that from. For us, we just have default profile. And then we're going down to the bottom and just make sure that synchronized NTFS and full sync is enabled. And it looks like it is, so we'll just continue on here. In the case you want to get notified of, something's broken, something's stuck, your files aren't syncing, this is where you can set up either SMTP or webhook notifications. SMTP, just traditional email will go out and say, hey, something is wrong. With the webhook, you can use that to integrate into Teams, Slack, or any other kind of application that you might be able to receive a webhook with and get notified. And lastly, we have our quick review summary. So this is just a quick overview of just making sure you set everything correctly. You can validate the paths that we set, make sure all the servers look correct and our settings are right. Looks good here, so we'll go ahead and commit this. All right, we see our prod file showed up. And then to kind of dive into it, we'll go back to our job runs and we can see that this job is in progress. So we'll just dive into this a little bit. So once you dive into your job runs overview, this kind of tells you the health of your job. We won't see too much right now because it is working on something called an index. So you'll see that server 1, since it was our reference agent, will go through and do an index. That index is really just kind of scanning and building a table of all the directories and files that are on that server. And then once that scan gets done, it'll validate if there needs to be a tree merge or anything and sync any missing files. We won't sit here and watch this count up. There's about 24,000 files in this particular folder. So while we wait for that to count up, we're going to go back to our job runs. I have a demo for this miscellaneous data, and we have a kind of a script job running to kind of show what data replication would look like. So we can see, currently the max speed that is transferred is about 84 files a second, 1.5 gigabits per second. And then we can dive in a little bit further and see our servers. We can see that they're both syncing. How many files are in these jobs? So we can see total, there's 796 files on both, in that sync job. And currently there's 781, which means it has some syncing to do. There's some files in the queue, and it's currently moving those back and forth. Over here, we can kind of see the up and down speed between those two servers. You get a feel for, the overall performance. All right, from here, we can dive a little bit deeper as well. So we can click on that agent, and then we can look at the overall health of that server. We can see it's getting a good up and down speed. Currently, there's nothing for it to do, so it's just going to show idle there. And then, is the server healthy? We can see, does it have free space, which is really important. If you run out of space, you end up crashing our server. So we can get an overview of, how healthy that server is right now. We can see currently it has one file in queue, so we know that it has, a file that needs to be synced down or up. This gives you a really detailed overview of the activity, that panel right there. So you can see as data comes in and it starts scanning, it looks like a VHD popped in. It's going to start hashing that and transmitting it to the other servers. So one thing DFSR doesn't offer, is this kind of granular detail of what's coming in the queue, what's syncing, and the overall performance there. We can also look at our files and kind of see what those files are doing. Have files been updated? Have they been downloaded? And where did they come from? So we can see that Lab01 added a file to the queue, and it was downloaded and synced over to Lab02. So we can get some really granular detail there. All right, back up a little bit. Let's go back to our jobs and see how that production folders was doing. So these folders were pretty in sync before we turned off DFSR. So I really kind of wanted to show you that when you do a migration, we don't have to go through and start, hashing all that data and making sure that everything's in sync 100% before anything happens. If it is close to being in sync or perfectly in sync, it can just count those files, validate that everything matches, and we're rocking and rolling. So I did kind of want to go over that, it doesn't take a whole lot of time to bring everything in sync, once you roll us out to that DFSR job. All right. I hope you saw that, it took us, I was looking at the clock, it took us about 7 minutes and 30 seconds to walk through that DFSR migration. And I hope that kind of gives you an idea of really how simple it is to roll this out, to get us off of DFSR and over to, Resilio Sync. So syncing those files. So I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to see if anyone has any questions or if there's anything that, we could go over to help you better understand, Resilio Connect.
Thanks, Jane. That's a great demo. Yeah, folks, so feel free to ask questions. And I think Zeph may have a few that have already come in.
Yes, we do. Okay, our first question is, how does the management work? If I have multiple server pairs syncing data, do I manage them all from one location? And actually, the answer to that is yes. So everything is done through one management console. All agents talk to a single management console, and it allows you to control all the workflows there. So you can have multiple server groups actually syncing to each other, but they're all controlled through a single management console. Let's see, next question. Does Resilio Connect offer compression in transit? And the answer to that is yes. Resilio Connect agents use gzip algorithm to compress data pieces. Just keep in mind that when you're using compression that you're going to use more disk I/O. So because files have to be compressed and then transmitted and then decompressed on the other side. So what you do save in terms of overall data being sent, you actually may lose in terms of performance, but it's not a big hit. And also, because we do use gzip compression, the files have to be compressible as well. All right. Question for you, Josh. How does pricing structure work?
Oh, good question. So pricing for Resilio Connect is maybe a little too complicated to talk about without showing a chart, and I don't have one to show right now. But basically, at a high level, it's an annual subscription, and it's based on the number of agents that are going to be syncing data. We've got a few different tiers that you can choose from that determine, if you want sort of basic support or you want more enterprise class support and faster response times, and kind of how much data and how fast you want to sync. So you're kind of picking a tier, and then it's based on how many devices you're going to be syncing data with. That's it. So it's very simple architecture. If you'd like to talk about pricing for a specific use case, feel free to, at the end of the webinar here, you'll see a link where you can get in touch and schedule a call with us for another demo or to schedule a free trial. we can have that conversation and we can get into more depth on the pricing. But hopefully that gives you the high level.
All righty, have another question. And actually, I've got a couple questions here I've noticed about bandwidth controls. James, can you kind of show the bandwidth scheduler so they can kind of get a feel for how that works?
Bandwidth schedulers are controlled through this bandwidth tab. And there's a couple different ways you can do it, but we'll go over kind of the high level or the global bandwidth control. It's really kind of a paint by numbers right here. So green means everything is full bandwidth. So let's say you wanted to pause synchronization. You say, oh, we got this little gray bubble. Well, we can click it here and, you can paint and say, well, it's paused during that time. We can also, add a couple of rules down here, and you see how they turn colors. So we could say, we're going to limit this, time frame to 10 megabits per second. So you can click into the bandwidth control and paint in, your different limits, and it's all fully customizable. You can make groups so different servers have, different bandwidth controls. So really can get as granular as you would like with, our bandwidth limits.
And to add on to that, we also offer bandwidth controls on the agents themselves. There's actually a bandwidth throttle rule is there. So you can, not only can you control it here, but you can control it at the agent level as well. Let's see. Okay, here's another good one. How does Resilio Connect detect changes in the job folder? James?
Sure. So in a DFSR scenario, the way changes are detected is when we are on that server or mounted to an SMB share, and a file is committed or changed or uploaded by a user, we get a notification through the SMB protocol. It's called change notify. And when we receive that, we go detect it, and then we can start syncing. Just in case something ever happens, let's say, you had a data center failure or whatnot, we can also do precursory scans, every 24 hours, once a week. You can define that. And that will just help us pick up any files that might have been missed due to, a network issue and whatnot. But I would say 9 times out of 10, we always get those SMB notifications, and that helps us sync on demand, as soon as that file is committed.
All right, great. Another question for Josh. Josh, how does licensing work per server, per sync group, per site?
Yeah, so it's per server. So per agent, which is syncing data. So you might have a site with 1 server. You might have a site with 10 servers. So it's not site-based licensing or or sync group licensing. You're not priced on exactly like the number of synchronization jobs. It's really just about the number of devices that you need to sync data. There are different tiers. So just to give you, for example, there's a basic tier, for smaller customers with smaller data sets, that'll give them standard 9x5 next business day type support. And we'll let them sync up to, say, 5 terabytes of data or 1 million files, and go at 100 megabits per second, for instance, right? But the higher tiers would give you much more capacity than that, and much faster speeds and better support SLAs. So again, you're sort of picking the tier with those metrics that fit your use case and fit your requirements. And then the pricing then is determined based on the number of devices that you're syncing. And it's sort of a tiered structure. So the more you buy, the cheaper it gets per agent. Hopefully that helps.
All right. Let's see, the next one. Can I control whether deletions are synced? Actually, this is a good question. So in a general sync job, there's kind of 2 roles that the agents take on: read write and read only. Now, if all of the agents are equal and they're all in a read write mode, meaning that any changes made on any of those agents propagate to the other machines, then deletions would be synced as well. However, if an agent is read only and they make any changes, then those changes are not propagated to any of the other machines. But also any updates to those files are also not propagated to other machines as well. So there's no way to control just deletions, but there is a way to control whether the changes in a folder will be propagated to other machines that are part of that job. Let's see. Another good one. Oh, okay. Here's a good one. James, just for you. How does Resilio deal with file logging?
So natively, Resilio does not have file locking per se. Like, we don't lock files. So what we do, we can sense locked. So if Windows has a lock on a file or a file is in use, we won't sync that. We see that that file is in use and currently locked by Windows. And what we'll do is we do have a timer. So if we run into a locked file, you'll get a little notification in the console that says, hey, this file is currently locked. And what we'll do is we have a timer every, by default, it's 60 seconds. We'll come around and just double check that, is that file still locked? As soon as it's unlocked and open and ready to be synced, we'll grab it and sync it across. But we can't sync files that are currently in use or active or locked.
All righty. Next question, with Resilio, are you able to export logs to JSON or CSV? Actually, for logs, we're able to integrate with other systems. And actually, this has more to do with events than it does with logs, with systems like Splunk and what have you, and other log aggregating software. The logs themselves, I know we are coming out with some features in the future where we're going to be able to export some of these events into CSVs and what have you, but that's not currently available. But you are able to export events and read those in other systems as well. Let's see. If disks become unavailable, does Resilio distinguish this from deletions? Absolutely. If an agent goes offline, we do not consider the files in it themselves have been deleted. The agent is offline, and when it comes back online, we look at the current agent state, and then we synchronize files accordingly. So a machine going offline does not trigger any sort of deletion event. Here's another one. Does it sync NTF permissions on files and folders? James?
Yes, it does. That is one of the key things we have to set up when doing like a DFSR migration. We do sync NTFS permissions. One of the key things is to do that, you would need a Active Directory account that has full control and abilities to set those permissions and those attributes on those files. So that is something important to keep in mind.
All right.
Zeph, not to interrupt you, there was a question about how somebody can reach out to us to follow up. So I just moved the slide here. There's a link here on this slide that you can use to schedule a call with us. You can also email us at sales@resilio.com. So just wanted to answer that one quickly.
All right. A lot of these. Oh yeah, CLI options with Resilio. Yes, actually we do support CLI, and we do have a fully functional API as well. And we can send documentation for that as well if you're interested. So all of the stuff that you're seeing us do in the management console can all be done via the command line as well. Let's see. Yes, okay, here's another good one. Does the management console support multiple logins? Yes, it does. In fact, you can have different level user accounts. And actually, James, can you show them the user module in the management console?
Yeah, I can. All right. There it goes. All right. So we do have this user section. So if you weren't, let's say, LDAP integrated, we do support LDAP integration, Azure AD integration. You can import users into here. If you were not integrated, you can create users manually. And then we do have different user groups that you can do. We have super admin, which is kind of, God mode here. We have administrator view only by default. Let's say you wanted to get super granular with that. We can give you view only or full access. You can pick which agent, view only or full access. And then you can even narrow it down for the job. So if you had, a group that was only allowed to see, miscellaneous data for whatever reason, you could start narrowing it down to, what they can do and how, how granular of access they have, at a per job level. So there's multiple things that you can do, as far as user management, user access, and kind of, putting up gates and walls to prevent things from going wrong.
All right. And that looks to be it. All right. Back to you, Josh.
Hey,
Okay, very good. I just wanted to, I'll turn it over to Jason. I saw a question come up right at the end there, right as you were closing it out, Zeph, about a link to the recording of this. If you had to join late, or if you want to share it with some of your colleagues or rewatch it, we will have a link that can be shared. And so expect that, I don't know, shortly after, I suppose.
yeah, and Josh, in fact, we're going to be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who joined, which will include links to everything, all the DFSR resources.
And actually, one other question just came in, and I think this is a good one as well. Does Resilio detect changes made by specific users? And what happens is actually Resilio detects changes made by a specific agent, meaning if you have multiple agents in a job, we will tell you which agent actually made a change, whether it modified a file, if a file needs to be uploaded, downloaded, what have you. But we don't track the actual users that are accessing each one of these agent machines. And that's it.
There was a question from a Sync business user. I don't see it in there now, though. I think it's something we had to deal with. Is Connect relevant for me since I've got a relatively complex data set? And I would say, yes, we should talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And others, yeah.
It's a good point because, like I mentioned, we do offer free trials or proof of concept. So if you're a Sync business user and you're curious about, whether Resilio Connect would be beneficial in your environment, I say let's talk about it and schedule a trial. Let's get it in your environment and have you test it out.
All righty. So why don't we wrap things up? Well, first of all, thank you everyone for joining. This has been tremendous. And thank you, James and Zeph and Josh, for a great presentation, great demo, great questions. Again, everyone who joined is going to get a follow-up email with links to everything. In the meantime, you're welcome to check out the website. We actually have a DFSR replacement solution tab, which has links to some of this material. But the webinar will be recorded and available to you via email. And if you have friends that missed this, we're going to actually have another email go out to other people that may have signed up but weren't able to attend. So with that, I thank you all, and please get in touch with us. With that, I'm going to end the webinar. Have a great rest of your day.